Good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, good morning, Lagos. How you guys doing?
Doing good as always and looking dapper as usual.
I try to be in these hard times.
I know. I'm coming to your house for Christmas. Thank you. We also have in the studio with us Chike Olisa. Chike, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Lagos.
And
It's an honor to be here, privilege.
as always, you can join the conversation. Send us a WhatsApp message to 0809 444 0981. Again, 0809 444 0981. We're streaming live on YouTube, so go onto our YouTube page at smooth981.fm. Again, at smooth981 on YouTube to catch the show, catch the action live. Let's get started, shall we? I'm going to start the show here from this headline from Punch newspaper. VAT declines as federal government states LG's share 672 billion naira. The federal government, 36 states of the federation, and the 774 local government areas of the country shared the sum of 671.91 billion naira as a revenue that accrued into the coffers of the government for the month of October. This was disclosed in a report signed by the Accountant General of the Federation, Ahmed Idris, which was released during the Federation Accounts Allocation Committee meeting in Lagos on Wednesday. The report noted that for the month of October 2021, the gross revenue available from that was 166.8 billion naira as against 170.85 billion naira distributed in the preceding month, resulting in a decrease of 4.56 billion naira. Good. Help us make sense of these figures.
Yeah, a lot of figures thrown here. Too many figures. Well, the headline says that it was a decline in VAT numbers. Yes, but it's not as if it's a it's always an upward curve, right? So it often oscillates depending on how much revenue the how much the Federal Revenue Service is able to get. And I think despite this drop, they are on track to beat last year's total VAT haul. But more significant here, Judith, is that it goes to show how difficult it is to actually meet your tax revenue targets, and seeing that taxes are going to be one of the major sources of revenue for government in the next half a decade or so. This is one that everyone needs to track. And no surprises here. I'm sure a lot of a lot of businesses in Lagos and maybe around the country are getting used to seeing a more aggressive Federal Inland Revenue Service, and that's because they are aggressive about about collecting their taxes. So yeah, so and that's because they are also under pressure to meet their own revenue targets. But the interesting thing is, if we continue to have lower tax revenues, particularly if you even look at petroleum profit tax as well, that even dropped a lot more than the other taxes, then you begin to wonder how the government will service some of its debts, because the story today about our debt situation is not so much about the total amount of debt we have. It's actually the debt service to revenue ratio, and that's really the figure that a lot of analysts are worried about. And we've seen it go over 90%, and in fact some projections suggest it's probably going to go above 100%, which means every single revenue that we're getting is actually just going to debt service. So the country is basically being operated 100% on debt. So sometimes you wonder, so what does this all mean for all of us? What it means is that you're going to see more aggressive taxation. That's it. So because the government will need to find ways
To pay
to
up.
to meet these bills. And yes, there are other sources of revenue for the government, but those sources of revenues do take time, and a lot of times, and they're also not necessarily within the control of the government. For example, oil is a major source of revenue for the government, but
And
they
the
don't
prices,
dictate oil prices. Can't even meet their own OPEC quota of 1.4 million barrels per day because of some of the challenges that they're having at the export terminals. So it means that the tax authorities would become a lot more aggressive, and this is also why you see a lot of the conversations around who takes VAT. Is it the state? Is it the federal? Because at the end of the day, it all boils down, to the money. So and that's where I get worried, because tax agencies also have a knack for going after companies that actually pay tax, not companies that don't pay tax. So it kind of seems like if you pay tax, then they know
There's pressure
you,
for you. They know
they know
you.
you have money, and then they now
You
come
have
back
to
to you again and
pay.
say, "Oh yeah, that tax you paid. Maybe you didn't pay." And I'm like, I even paid. There are some people that don't even pay at all, right? Why did you? No, so so that's sort of like the kind of pressure you face, because of things like that. So it's a little bit, dicey, but that they had lower VAT revenues this month compared to the month before. No big deal there. It happens sometimes. Not really an upward curve. But for all of us, this just
Just relax.
yeah,
Just calm
it's
down.
coming.
Let's move on to Premium Times here. This one is from Premium Times. Sack to retire 152 top staff as Senate queries Commission for spending over 6 billion naira on salaries. The Senate has queried the Securities and Exchange Commission, SAC, for spending about 90% of its revenue on salaries and emoluments of staff of the commission. They had disclosed that it spent over 6 billion naira on staff salaries, with other overhead costs totaling about 8 billion naira in 2021, an expenditure which the lawmakers described as outrageous. And I just need to know why.
I, I, I don't know why you're referring to though, but
Why?
why do they think it's outrageous?
I mean,
Like,
that's why
what's your
I'm like,
own
why?
lawmakers? Like, I don't even think you have, you know, maybe to call it a moral justification to start
Because
questioning
you guys
something
are
like that.
not.
So let's look at the numbers, right? I mean, like they say, the devil is in the details. In as much as we didn't see a lot of details here, but we can make some assumptions. 6 billion, and if you use maybe 500 staffs, right? That comes about 12 million per annum, isn't it? For staff, or people that are meant to regulate publicly quoted companies, capital market operators, like people that are some of the most well-paid, employees in Nigeria, or businesses in Nigeria. I think you gotta pay them very well if you want them to do a good job, right?
Yes.
And this is not a job for novices, or or for you know maybe people who are not very who I don't know, I don't want to use the word very smart, because
Trained,
everybody's smart, really trained, exactly,
educated,
very, because you got to be
yeah,
very, very skilled
and
to
that's
work in a
expensive.
sec anywhere in the world, yeah,
Yeah.
because you're the regulator of the regulators in the capital market, so you've got to be at some kind of competitive pay structure. And so, based on that, I just use an average of 500, because I think they probably have more than 500 staff. So if you use that, you're looking at 12 million or so per annum, and which is about a million, per month. Without talking about taxes and pensions, deductions, and all the other stuff. So looks very reasonable to me, from my own vantage point, because I haven't seen the details yet. Uh, and then they also talk about overhead cost of 8 billion has been too high. Again, no context to this, right? So what are you comparing it with? What are those things that you're seeing that
That
makes
is too
this really high?
expensive,
So I don't know, because sometimes when our lawmakers, sometimes they try to make some of these things very sensational, just build up some kind of sensational
like they're
news and
doing the work,
make it look like it's
they're working.
but where there's a challenge though is with revenue, right? And because if SEC was making a lot of money, then I don't think there'll be any issues here. And the lawmakers' point is that, look, you're spending over 9% of your revenue on expenses, so there's nothing coming back to the government. In fact, you're even dipping into your reserves, to plug the holes that you have. Because you haven't even spent 100% of your budget yet, so it's likely that you're going to have to dip into your reserves, and who knows, maybe come back to the government cap in hand for more money. And that's a challenge, and that really is because of the state of the economy. So the capital market, and a lot of the a lot of activities in that market where SEC makes money from, has been in lull for a couple of years now. So to give you guys an example, SEC makes money when, let's say, there are deals in the country, maybe one company is acquiring another company, or the company is trying, yeah, or
Measure
mergers, and so they haven't really been happening as much as it
much.
is outside Nigeria. And a lot of all this fundraising that you guys are seeing, yeah, mostly done outside, and mostly within offshore companies. So the headlines that you see from tech companies raising X million dollars and that $1 million, not really happening Nigeria, per se, because a lot of these companies are incorporated outside Nigeria. So a lot of those deals are taking place outside Nigeria. We just see the headlines in here, and kind of assume that the money is actually coming in here. So I'm not really sure what sort of oversight SEC has over this kind of deal. So that would definitely impact on the kind of revenues that they make. So that's understandable. But it's just one part of this story that kind of like interests me though. And Lagos, just let me just let me kind of read it out. I think it says, um, though revenue performance is still weak, but series of innovations. Let me just recap, Chike, just listen. Though revenue performance is still weak, but series of innovations like newly introduced charges for secondary investors. Wow, that's an innovation.
Well,
Newly introduced
challenges.
charges
It's
for
innovative.
secondary investors
It's
will
innovative to
boost it
find.
up from 2022 fiscal year and beyond. When we say that regulators sometimes compete with businesses, we know what we're saying.
Well, it's innovative to find ways to get more money out of people. This is from Oluwashiru, and she goes, but are they just 500 staff? What levels are these 500? What
You got
work
a
are
good
they
point.
doing in the capital market? What are the emoluments of the leadership? And that's from her there. This is Fred from Festac. He goes, good morning, crew. Taxes are on the basis earnings. Where there are no earnings, there is not supposed to be tax payment. Lower VAT only shows that level of business transactions are low. Instead of aggressive tax promotion, why not improve on the business environment to get more taxes? A lot of businesses have gone down into liquidation as a result of aggressive tax. Well, so we find ourselves. Let's move on to Guardian newspaper as we talk about education and still on money. It's going to be pretty much a theme for today's show. The House of Representatives yesterday urged the federal government to open a realistic negotiation with the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, to serve another round of strike by the lecturers. It advised the government to urgently implement the earlier agreements reached with the union in the interest of students, parents, and the education sector. Moving the motion, which led by the resolution during plenary yesterday in Abuja, the member representing one federal constituency of Edo State in the lower legislative chamber, Professor Julius Ohubere, lamented the level of insincerity on the part of the government. Chike, what are your thoughts on this story?
Well, like the honorable member said, the level of insincerity, because we've been on this for almost a year now. I remember very well in December. That was their last agreement they had. That was in December, where the Minister of Labor said that the federal government had met all the demands of ASU. But unfortunately, I think about a month or two ago, a top official of ASU said that out of 8 demands, only 2 had been met. That the other 6 and so many other ones, have not been met. So sometimes, it raises serious concerns with, sometimes the quality of what we hear from some of our public officers. Because, okay, just a little while ago, we were talking about what some parastatals, what they pay their staff, and it calls to question the kind of what government policy is on education, and the kind of what how they want to, or how they feel that they want to take education to the next level. Our education sector has really been a mess, for quite a while, and like what Go was saying earlier on, I think a lot of our parastatal staffs, public officers in the parastatals, that for me, I think they are overpaid.
You
I,
think so?
I think so, yeah. I think so,
Well, I mean,
because
for me, though,
I think they're overpaid, because I've had the privilege of being in the system, and I know that there are a lot of you know unbudgeted allowances that some of these parastatals they do earn, that probably some of those some of the
To
lawmakers do not know, do not know about. So I think these are places they should plug revenue leakages in some of these parastatals. That's what I feel. Because I think the government has not shown, enough interest in the education sector. Because I can't, it really raises, it is a real, concern that after almost a year, like 11 months after the agreement was reached, we're still back to this, and we are still talking about whether they should go on strike or whether they should not go on strike. Out of agreements that were signed, only two has been met.
so
And okay,
go ahead, go ahead.
so
But
it's
is it not because there's no money? Because at the end of the day, that's what I always say. This thing all boils down to money. So you can
no,
sign all the agreements.
Ugo,
So it's either there's no money, or like you said, it's or maybe
it's a
because
misplacement of priority. That's for me. That's what I feel.
Okay,
Because
can I come in there very quickly? Now, I'm going to ask you this question because this is still from Premium Times. Yesterday, they reported that the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, will on Thursday today meet the leadership of the Academic Staff Union of Universities and the Minister of Finance, that's Zainab Ahmed, as well as the Minister of Education, Adamu Adamu, to prevent fresh industrial action by the union. And he announced this on Tuesday during a debate on the motion calling for the intervention of the House. And he also said that he said the issue is not lack of funding, but releasing the
of the
funds.
funds. I wonder what the difference is.
well, for me, I want to believe that what he means by what he meant by releasing the fund, probably the bureaucratic bottlenecks. But I think that's 11 months, a couple of months, we're able to do that. I think I think it's not a priority for the Fed, because I can assure you that if it was probably one of the oil sector unions that had this agreement with the federal government, I can assure you
You would have released the
we
money.
wouldn't have been talking about it now.
Do you think anything will come out of the meeting today?
Well, I don't know. They've held series of meetings. They've intervened a couple of times. That's my prayer that something comes out of it. I want to believe that they should, because it's it's really very it's a big problem that 11 months after an agreement was reached, we're still back to this, that they have not been met. So it's a real problem. It's a
My
real
own issue
problem.
is that these kids are gonna be back home. No, man. No.
Let's move on to more. Yeah, this is from Guardian newspaper. The federal government has directed the attorneys general of the 36 states of the federation to henceforth prosecute motorists that willingly cause damage to federal roads and bridges and ensure that offenders face legal sanctions. The Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Mr. Abubakar Malami San, in a statement in Abuja, urged them to take over both pending and new cases of damages to roads, bridges, and other public assets within their jurisdiction. Ugo.
Well, I don't know. It's a good idea. It's good. I mean, but I just hope this is not just huffing and puffing. You know what I mean? There's a lot of damages to our roads, and it kind of hurts, especially when you consider how much is spent, building these roads, and when you know that some of the money spent is sort of like kind of padded. You know what I mean? So it hurts you more that you see roads that they've just built, and then there's just somebody eh, there now, sort of cutting the road to lay one pipe and the other. Those things can, and then when they do want to cover it up, they don't cover it up well. You also see a lot of accidents on highways that damage maybe the curves and all that, and nothing happens. And of course, let's not even talk about government infrastructure itself, government buildings. So there's a lot of damage to government roads and bridges. And of course, in fact, in some parts of Lagos and some parts of the country, bridges are, particularly in Lagos, bridges are toilets for a lot of people. They're like, where people go and defecate, so and but whether how they want to go about prosecuting is what I don't know. Can there be deterrents? I think there can be, because it's really a waste of resources, Jordan. I mean, let's even look at our bus stops. There's just so many bus stops around that people don't even use. So the downfall drivers will leave the bus stop and still stop right before it at the junction. And then what about overhead bridges that it's now a marketplace? It's meant to be where people, as foot bridges, where people just should actually cross over to the next. It's a marketplace. So there's so many infrastructure we have around the country, particularly in Lagos State, that are obviously misused. So it's a step in the right direction. I just don't know if they have the capacity to implement stuff like this, because where you have an economy where there's so much poverty, a lot of people are poor, people are just struggling to survive. This is what happens. If a woman who's trying to feed her kids, or a guy who's trying to feed his kids, can't rent a shop, he will just come outside the road, arrange his own shop there where he doesn't need to pay rent, but at least he can sell, trying to live in. So it's either, he does that, or you provide an alternative for that guy. And I think that's the price we pay for the kind of society that we have today.
And also, even talk about the railways as well. Just culprits just going there and taking out parts of the railway just to
Exactly,
go sell
exactly.
as scrapes. Let's move on now. Chiki, I'm coming to you for this one. Senate passes bill to regulate real estate business, and this is from this day newspaper. The Senate on Wednesday passed a bill to establish the Real Estate Regulatory Council of Nigeria. The passage bill is coming 17 days after a 21-story building in Ikoyi, Lagos, collapsed on November 1st, 2021, which claimed over 40 lives with several others injured. The council, when established, will, among others, curb fraudulent practices and ensure that the real estate business conforms with the National Building Code in Nigeria. Isn't this too late at this point?
Well, I don't know whether to say if it's ironic or funny that, it's coming at this time that the sector has been in the public eye for the bad reasons anyway. Well, I think I think, if we cast our mind back, this particular bill was actually passed. I think it was the eighth
The
assembly or
eighth
something.
assembly,
Eighth
yeah.
assembly passed this bill, and but for some one or two defects, President Buhari, didn't sign it. So it was represented again April this year. So, and then the bill basically, I think, is trying to regulate some of the fraudulent practices that some of the stakeholders, especially the property developers and some agents, that they perpetrate, in the sector. But I think the sector really has not been, regulated. I think it's an all-comers affair, and so I think it's a bill in the right direction. But the thing is, because you're passing a bill with various government agencies across the length and breadth of the country, would they be able to see through the implementation of the bill? That's a very vital question. Because take for instance Lagos State. I know Lagos State. I think they have some of the they have some very wonderful regulations about building control, but
Wonderful.
Being an actor is
but
another thing.
as far as I'm concerned, it's been a mess. Trying to implement some of those things, even by the Lagos State government officials, to be able to get building approval is a challenge, is a problem. And some of the developers, those that really want to go through the correct route, they tell you some of the challenges that they face and they go through. I mean, it's quite frustrating. So it's being able to see some of these things through the implementation that is a problem. It's not about coming up with the bill, but seeing the implementation go through. If they do, probably some of these issues we have, fraudulent practices, very low quality of low
Building
quality buildings that we
materials,
have,
yeah.
materials that we use, probably be able to drop it to the barest minimum. But it's being able to implement it. So I have serious concerns about doing that. Seeing that through. That's especially in Lagos and Abuja, because these are some of the two, because of the nature of commercial activities and government activities in those two. So, I mean, the stakes are quite high in those two areas. So being able to implement it in Lagos and Abuja is a problem. You understand? But
Yes.
so
it,
that's it.
it, it makes a very strong point, and that's the issue for me as well,
Yeah.
because I also thought of that too. How you gonna, I mean, I wonder what kind of bill would sort of bring all the regulators in real estate, because that's a money spinner for a lot of state governments, real
Yeah.
estate,
Always look.
particularly in Lagos. Yeah.
Nigerians always look for a loophole
Yeah,
in
so how
trying
are you
to
gonna
make
do it?
money.
I don't know. And I remember the original bill. I think Chike I think it sort of targeted it was more skewed to real estate
Really,
agents
exactly.
and all these guys that make money from, I don't know, but let's see how it goes.
Let's hope for the best. Let's move on. Still on bills. This time, I really do have concerns with this particular story because, as far as for me, I think it's a good step in the right direction. But I just feel like the healthcare sector is just it's the state of it at the moment. It's just, I don't know if this would ever work. But bill on free healthcare for children, for Nigerian children, divides lawmakers. And this is coming from Premium Times. The House of Representatives has passed for second reading a bill to ensure free healthcare for children from age 0 to 18 years in all hospitals amidst debate. The general principle of the bill was debated by members of the House on Wednesday and passed despite opposition from some members. Now, the bill was sponsored by Bello Kauje. He is for APC Kebi and read for the first time on the 8th of July. And if passed, government hospitals will be mandated to provide free medical services for children, including diagnosis, treatment, prevention of illness, and other physical and mental illnesses in Nigeria. Chike.
Well, back to some of the government challenges. I think the COVID-19 that we had last year, I think it really, we always knew our health sector was in a mess, but I think the COVID-19 really, gave Nigerians an insight into the level of decadence we had in this, the health sector. So it's it was it, I this bill. Well, I I have a problem with sometimes passing bills that we know is going to be very difficult to implement because the health sector is not well funded, and then you are passing a bill for free health care in government hospitals. When you're passing the bill in government hospital, in fact, I think some of the government hospitals, from experience I've had, I think they charge almost as high as some of the private hospitals. So when you say free healthcare, government is not funding the health sector.
The doctors are underpaid.
Exactly, the
Facilities are
doctors
not
are not
there.
well paid. I mean, where
Yeah,
is it?
The
Where
no
is the money going
jobs.
to come from to be able to
there's a
fund the healthcare? I mean, the health sector.
huge brain drain in that sector
There
as
is, and
well.
if you're passing a bill, I believe you're passing a bill for that is going to be implemented around the country. Are you passing? I mean, we want to find out, would the state governments, are they also going to be able to? Are they also going to be obliged to implement the bill as well too? So for me, it's a bill that I don't know how they're going to implement
Wishful
it.
thinking.
It's
That's
Good
a
intention, no
that's
money.
that's the right
no,
phrase to
no,
describe
the
it.
problem we have with some of our bills is that we find it difficult to do the basic things first, but we want to, like, I don't know.
Show of
I don't know whether to say play to the gallery or just, like, I don't know, but
It's a lawmaker doing his job. So
I just want to say the show of the fact that you're doing your job.
but I know that the bill is not. I don't think it's something that the federal, the government can be able to implement, especially at this point in time.
Guys, we're pretty much out of time, but have lots of messages here, so we're going to take them as we wrap things up here in the studio. This is Dele Owolowo, and he goes, "Good morning, studio presenters. On tax, a country's economy cannot be supported by a tax revenue mostly petroleum funded, import orientated, and civil service driven without a domestic and productive base. We need a domestic production and export driven economy to get substantial tax revenue." And child, all right, this is a Mo from Ikeja. It goes, "Good morning. They should start with the tankers in Apapa." And that's from Emo from Ikeja there. That's another way to look at
true.
it. Those guys, they are ruining the bridges at Apapa. I will
Apapa,
tell you
Apapa
that.
is a conspiracy. They can't solve that
It's
problem
a crime
because the
scene.
people that are going to solve it are beneficiaries of
I said that's why I said
of
it's a
are the
crime scene.
biggest beneficiaries of the crisis that is going
The
on there.
extortion that goes on those
So it's
bridges,
no.
it's insane. This is Fabian from Ekpe. It goes, good morning, freshly pressed. Concerning the issue of damages to the road, I hope that those who destroy already repaired roads to lay pipes, etc., and the government establishment that fails to maintain the road will be equally punished. This is Tayo from Ajay. It goes, I wonder what the president is doing while Agbaje is talking to ASU and other unions. AGF must have witnessed something recently to have prompted those circular or directive. Are all the current checks in the real estate sector unable to detect fraud? I feel this is another layer of bureaucracy in this sector. This is Dami from Ikeja, and it goes, when it comes to agreements, the government is like a Randy Casanova who promises heaven and earth just to get you into bed with the latest woman to
Wow.
catch his eyes. Check out his commitment after she agrees. No amount of regulation will protect an industry from itself unless the professionals agree to put a stop to sharp practices. And lastly, this is
True,
from
true.
Yinka Bolu. Goes, wonder shall never end. Now scoring another establishment salary. This life no just balance at all. Have they told us how much they as NAS earns? It would have been an awkward session at that meeting. Ugo, it is huffing and puffing. Shebi, we have Firma. Let them do their job. The AGF is trying to derail us from forgetting about that 305 to dollar madness. And that's from Yinka. Thank you all for your messages. Ugo, thank you for coming through. Chike,
Cool.
thank you so much as always.
Thank you so
That
much.
brings us to the
Yeah.
very end to Freshly Pressed 981. Stick around. Coming up at 8:10 is going to be time for Lagos Talks 981. That's where you get to share with us your comments and analysis. We'll open up our phone lines then. Stay with us.
This country.
The headlines, the stories,
Hot mic.
I was really off my mic.
No. You cut off your mic. I'm going to turn it off.
Oh, sorry. No, I mean I already removed it. That's what I
Yeah,
thought.
no, it's just a
When you
headphone.
get studio,
Sorry about that.
Thank you.